The Land Rover Defender is one seriously hardcore off-roading SUV that will sadly spend the majority of its life here in the city doing mundane school runs. So, in this video, we're going to be leaning towards its off-roading capabilities for the handful of enthusiasts who actually plan to use it as such. And while we're doing that, I'll be telling you everything there is to know about the Defender's practicality, its features, its driving dynamics, and what it'll cost you to run on a monthly basis. And oh boy, are the costs equally as colossal. So, without further ado, let's get started. Car Talks: Power, Precision, Performance. This is the 110D350X Dynamic HSE, and the use of the word dynamic in there is funny because the Defender is about as aerodynamic as a 5-bedroom house in Bryanston. Nevertheless, under the bonnet is a 3-liter inline 6-cylinder turbo diesel engine producing 257 kilowatts and 700 newton meters of torque, a stable powertrain for Jaguar Land Rover that we're all familiar with by now. Power sent to all 4 wheels via an 8-speed ZF torque converter gearbox. Curb weight comes in at 2.4 tons, give or take, depending on how you expect it, and it'll do the 0 to 100 km/h sprint in a claimed 6.4 seconds. We are out at Henop's 4x4 trail, which sits on the verge of the Gauteng and Northwest border. Now, I've booked private access to ensure that I had all the time in the world to try out different settings while making as many mistakes as possible and actually having fun. So with that being said, let's take a look at the specifications that make this house on wheels such a menacing off-roader. For starters, the Defender has very short front and rear overhangs, which gives it an impressive class-leading approach angle of 38 degrees and a departure angle of 40 degrees. That means it is less likely to scrape its nose when descending a slope or its rear when climbing one. To put that into perspective, the only SUVs that have better departure and approach angles on sale in South Africa today are its bigger brother, the Defender Octa and Jeep Wrangler. Interestingly, the Suzuki Jimny also has a slightly better departure angle at 49 degrees. This Defender comes equipped with Land Rover's sophisticated electronic air suspension, so you can raise the ride height up to 291 millimeters, and increase its water wading depth to 900 millimeters, which is basically a meter of water. That is mind-boggling. And unlike the previous generation Defender, which utilized a ladder frame chassis and rigid, solid live axles, the modern Defender features a unibody chassis with independent front and rear suspensions on each wheel, which give you an impressive 500 millimeters of wheel articulation. This design enables exceptional off-road performance by maintaining ground contact over uneven terrain. And despite being a unibody, this chassis is more rigid than any other modern chassis that Land Rover makes, including the more expensive Range Rovers. The tires are Goodyear Wrangler all-terrains with a 255mm section width, wrapping around 20-inch satin alloys all around. This is a very good tire, and I reckon I don't even need to deflate these, so I'll just keep them at normal road tire pressure. So in layman's terms, what all of these numbers mean is that if you can't do it in a Defender, there's not much else you can do it in. Alright, now that the admin is out of the way, let us begin. And kicking things off is the axle twister, which is designed to test wheel articulation. So that 500 millimeters of wheel travel is going to come in handy. We'll begin by firstly lifting up the air suspension to ensure maximum ground clearance. This also has a low range transfer case, so I'll go ahead and engage low range mode, and once you've pressed on the low range button, the vehicle will request you to flick the gearbox into neutral. And at that point, you should be seeing your off-roading information on the instrument cluster. You will then flick it back into drive and Bob's your uncle. It's also got 2 locking differentials which are managed electronically, and it's quite a clever little system too, because the differentials aren't locked up 100% of the time. Instead, the vehicle senses the terrain and decides which differential to lock up at any given point in time once you start moving to ensure maximum traction. Admittedly, I did take my sweet time on this trail for one simple reason. This is a 2 million rand SUV before options, and our very first test car from Jaguar Land Rover South Africa. So I am trying not to go belly up and write off the vehicle if that's okay with you. Maybe we can write off the third vehicle from them. Okay, I'm kidding, JLR, but I'll definitely push the Octa a little harder when we get it on test. And that is a promise. Either way, this was just like any other day in the office for the Defender. Now, it has a rock crawl mode which would have allowed the vehicle to do all of the work without any input from me. But I decided to modulate the throttle myself because the Defender inspires so much confidence that it feels like you can do anything. The front wheels only lifted up marginally, but those rear wheels remained planted at all times. I mean, look at that articulation on that rear suspension. This is an SUV that doesn't punish you at all off-road, so you can make a few mistakes and it'll still carry you through with such ease. I must say though that it is humongous with a body width of 2008mm excluding the mirrors. So you have to go really wide when making a turn so that you don't clip any of the branches alongside the trail. Whereas something like a Suzuki Jimny, for example, doesn't have that problem. It's super narrow and far more nimble around here. The next test is hill descent control, which is designed to automatically manage the vehicle's speed and braking and allows the vehicle to slowly crawl downhill to increase maneuverability over loose and uneven surfaces. And as you can see, the vehicle is slowly crawling downhill without any input from me. And in fact, the highest speed I saw during our descent was 8 km per hour. Comparatively, the bike B30 was descending at over 20 km per hour. And maybe that statement is a bit unfair to bike because you can buy 3 B30s for the price of one Defender. This comes equipped with a 360-degree camera, and those front cameras especially come in handy because they allow you a better view of the terrain ahead of you, as it's often difficult to judge the terrain from inside of the cabin. The final test of today is the water wading depth of 900mm. Unexpectedly, most of the mud holes on the trail are a walk in the park for the Defender. Except for maybe one mud hole, which is the one we're really here for, and that is Seipgat. My Afrikaans brothers and sisters will correct me if I'm wrong here, but Seipgat directly translates to the drinking hole. The first portion of Seipgat features a smaller mud hole, which is still a walk in the park for the Defender. But the second mud hole is as deep as it is wide, and its water levels are well above 1 meter during rain season. Which is why it comes with a warning to send your wife or co-driver in first as your yardstick so that if they drown and die, then you'll know it's probably too deep to cross. Oh, but I love the humor though. It's winter season now and hasn't rained in a while, so based on a calculated guesstimation, the Defender's 900mm should be more than sufficient. A guesstimation that may prove to be fatal to the car if I've gotten it completely wrong. So let's see how right or wrong I am. Fun fact, with 900mm of wading depth, Land Rovers can traverse waters deeper than any other SUV on sale in South Africa today. So at the depth I'm currently in, most SUVs in the market would have completely drowned, including the old Defender, the Jeep Wrangler, the Toyota Land Cruiser 300, and even the internal combustion G-Wagon. Although the electrified G-Wagon would have been just fine because its wading depth is 850mm. Now I must say that I was really feathering the car in the water because the deeper you go, it does take a second for the weight sensors to update your depth. And I did not want to find myself in a situation where I had suddenly exceeded the 900mm, because hydrolocking is a real concern, and within a blink of an eye, you've killed the engine. And then they sue your small channel, Uzodlani. Now I must pay Mambo repairs because JLR wants their car in the same condition they gave it to you. Nope. At this point, all four wheels are completely submerged. I mean, how capable is this SUV, honestly? But needless to say that I made it through quite comfortably with 100mm to spare because the deepest point of these waters at the time was about 800mm. And you'll be happy to know that I came out the other side with my number plate still intact because not many SUVs are that lucky. I can confidently say that this is the most capable and most comfortable off-roader that we've ever had on the channel, and arguably more capable than the previous generation Defender 2. But having said that, somewhere in the back of my mind, I do worry about all of these electronics and how they'll behave 10 years later when you're 200,000 kilometers in. So from that perspective, perhaps the previous generation Defender is more future-proof, but time will tell. Once it's all said and done, you simply put the vehicle back into high range mode, reduce the suspension to its normal ride height, and make your way back to the city to have lunch with your spouse, where it'll completely blend in as a sophisticated luxury SUV. And for all of you Land Rover trolls, notice how the instrument cluster has no warning lights, even after some serious bundu bashing. Moving on to driving dynamics. Now for the most aggressive launch on the D350, you can activate dynamic mode within the vehicle's hidden factory software, which has been disabled for this unit. And we're gonna keep it that way because it belongs to the OEM. So we'll simply leave everything in comfort mode except the gearbox because we can change that into sport mode. Left foot hard on the brake, right foot hard on the accelerator until the limiter at 2,500 RPM, and the rest is history. Two and a half tons should not be able to move forward that quickly. Now, admittedly, the sound is piped in through the Meridian speakers, but it'll take a very discerning ear to catch that out. And to listen to that Meridian sound system, head over to my YouTube shorts. The steering is precise around the bends, but because of that high center of gravity, it feels like I'm captaining an MSC cruise ship. But my golly gosh, is this thing fast. This trim comes with 20-inch satin alloys wrapped with Wrangler all-terrain tires all around, so that's gonna work against us when it comes to the fuel efficiency test. But I would imagine the owner of this type of vehicle wants to go off-road every now and then. Although you can spec all-season tires at no extra cost. Claimed fuel consumption is 8.5 liters per 100 kilometers on the combined cycle. And I managed 13.9 liters in the city and 8.8 liters on the freeway during the one-tank challenge to the Drakensberg Mountains. I'll leave the link to that video in the description box below for those who haven't seen it yet. So out on the freeway, you can get really close to the manufacturer's claimed range of over 1,000 kilometers. Interestingly, fuel consumption was a colossal 45.7 liters to the 100 during the off-road test, and I managed to burn through 500 rands worth of diesel during the 2-hour stint. So whether you're going to be friends or enemies with the fuel pumps is completely dependent on how you're going to be using your Defender. It can be very efficient and not so efficient at the same time. This also comes with the Land Rover Care Plan that includes a 5-year 100,000 kilometer warranty and maintenance plan. Moving on to practicality and features, you get 786 liters worth of boot capacity. And because this is an off-roader, you get a rubberized floor that you can just wash down with water after off-roading. This comes with the optional 32,000 Rand 5+2 seat configuration, so with the third row of seats fully upright, boot capacity reduces to 231 liters. Now the third row of seats virtually has no footwells, so even kids might find it uncomfortable. Comparatively, the Toyota Land Cruiser 300 gets 1,004 liters, while the Mercedes-Benz G400D gets 454 liters. You can also throw BMW X5s and Mercedes GLEs in the mix as competitors, except they're not as capable off-road, so something to remember. Now this piece of cloth you're seeing on your screen is actually the parcel shelf, and in my culture we call this ilapu. So lilapel, the parcel shelf is on ilapu. Nevertheless, you get a 12-hole socket and the middle row folds in a 40-20-40 split configuration. Now this unit is equipped with the optional 42,000 Rand towing package, so you can just press on the button in the boot to deploy the tow bar, or you can do it from the infotainment. And brake towing capacity comes in at 3.5 tons if that's worth anything to you. This unit is also equipped with air suspension, so you can lower the vehicle when loading groceries. And for the first time in a long time on the channel, we have a manually operated tailgate. And behind the tailgate is your spare wheel with a rather skewed cover. But I had left my leveling tool at home. My OCD really wanted to fix it, but without my leveling tool, I'll probably still see it anyway. Stepping into the rear cabin, you've got some grab handles to help you into this tall vehicle, which are also available in front, by the way. You get black leather seats with a center armrest and 2 cup holders. Personally, I'd go with the Caraway Windsor leather seats to contrast beautifully with the Woolstone green exterior paint color, which are 137,000 Rand optional extra, by the way. You do get ISOFIX anchor points for your child seat, 6 airbags, and a 5-star Euro NCAP rating. You get 3-zone climate control, and interestingly, the 2 knobs in the rear are synchronized, so the left and right rear passengers always have the same temperature. Whereas in the Range Rover Sport, you get 4-zone climate control, so the left and right rear passengers can individually set different temperatures. You get 2 USB Type-C ports, and rear legroom is okay, but this is where Chinese SUVs claw back some brownie points against the Europeans because they're really spacious in the rear. So even an SUV as small as the Omoda C7 still has more rear legroom than a lot of the European SUVs, including the Defender. And speaking of the Chinese, after weeks of having back-to-back Chinese cars on test, jumping straight into the front cabin of the Defender feels welcoming. I know exactly where the hazard button is, I don't have to look around for it. I've got physical knobs and dials, and most importantly, I've never driven a Defender in my life until now, but I know exactly what to do. It doesn't feel like I need a 1-week crash course just to pull the vehicle out of my garage. Europe's philosophy of engineering reminds me of Steve Jobs' philosophy when he co-founded Apple. And that was to always start with the user experience first and then work backwards to create the technology that would enable such a user experience. Whereas the Chinese start with the technology first and then throw 100 features at the user in the hopes that the user might like 5 of the things that we've done to the car. And then we go back to the drawing board after feedback. But in the meantime, the other 95 features are frustrating the living out of the user that has just bought the car. Anyway, you get 14-way electrically adjustable leather seats with memory function, which are a no-cost option. Both seats are heated and ventilated, which you can turn on within the infotainment or using the aircon temperature knob, which is multi-function. You get a panoramic sunroof with slide and tilt function, but the portion of the sunroof which is in the rear is oddly small. Nevertheless, you get a sunshade to keep the sun out and black roof lining. You still get those classic alpine windows on the roof that have always been synonymous with the Defender since the beginning of time. And speaking of the roof, this one is body colored, but you can spec a contrasting black roof at no extra cost. Storage-wise, you get a dashboard tray with a USB Type-C port, you get a cubby hole that's been dampened, and because the gear select is mounted to the dashboard, you have all the storage space under the center console, where you will also find a USB Type-C port and a 12-volt socket. This unit comes equipped with a fridge, which I put to good use on my road trip, and it makes for such a lovely travel companion. 2 cup holders are available alongside a wireless charger and another storage tray that you can tuck away, which is perfect for wallets and other valuables. New for this facelift is a 13.1-inch PV Pro infotainment touchscreen with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. The pre-facelift had a smaller 11.4-inch display. Now obviously from this angle, the gear selector looks like it's awkwardly in the way, but for the front passengers, it is really not. What's also nice is that Apple CarPlay doesn't occupy the entire screen, so it still leaves a few buttons for the native operating system. The resolution is crystal clear and you can adjust various settings such as your 4x4 modes or your 360-degree camera and many other functions. You even have an air purifier that reads the inhalable particulate matter, or PM for short. And as expected, the air up on these mountains is as clean as can be. You also get a 12.3-inch interactive driver's display, which is super user-friendly and very easy to get used to. The Defender gets Land Rover's clear side rearview mirror that uses a rear-mounted camera to display a wide-angle view of what's happening behind the vehicle. But if you prefer seeing your giant spare wheel, you can turn the camera off and use the static mirror instead. And it wouldn't be a luxury SUV without an electrically adjustable steering wheel. Overall, the interior is luxurious but still retains that rugged Defender look with the exposed screws and a grab handle on the dashboard. For me, I'd probably go for the Range Rover Sport for similar money. It's less weight, more aerodynamic, and a touch more luxurious. And I found the throttle response to be a bit better calibrated in the Range Rover Sport D350. But I totally get why someone would want to buy one of these. It is honestly badass and screams Mafia Boss if you black it out. And actually, I think that the proportions of the Defender 110 are near perfect because the Defender 90 looks like it has just reversed into a wall, while the 130 looks disproportionately long. So if I were ever to buy a Defender, I think it would be the 110. How stunning is this woolstone green exterior paint color, and it's blending in so well with this terrain. Recently, I had brought the Mazda CX-60 Takumi Edition in Zircon Sand down to this region, and there's something about these earth tone colors that make you feel like you're one with nature. Other highlight features include driver attention monitoring, blind spot monitoring, head-up display, matrix LED headlights with anti-dazzle, and front puddle lights to help you in the dark. Moving on to pricing and cost of ownership, you can essentially get into the Defender 110 lineup from 1.88 million rands with the D250X Dynamic SE, all the way up to the 3.74 million rand Octa. The sweet spot of the range, however, is going to be the D350X Dynamic HSE that we're in, and that one starts from 2,033,000 rands. This one as spec'd is just under 2.2 million rands, and if you were to add the Explorer package, which comes with a roof rack, roof ladder and side-mounted gear carrier, which we call a scuffed-in South Africa, then your Defender would cross the 2.2 million rand mark. On finance, the D350 without any optional extras would cost you 38,000 rands a month over 6 years at the current prime interest rate of 10.25% per annum. Insurance is risk profile dependent, and the cheapest quote I got was 5,800 rands. A full tank of diesel will cost you a mind-boggling 3,000 rands at the current inland price of diesel for its 89-litre fuel tank. Something needs to happen with the diesel price because 34 rands a litre is just not sustainable. At 20 rands a litre, then your full tank would hover around 1,700 rands, which is far more reasonable. And that would bring your total cost of ownership to a smidge under 50,000 rands. In total for the week, including the off-road review, I burned through 4,200 rands worth of diesel. So around the city, fuel consumption climbs up rather quickly into the 13s per 100 kilometers. And at 4,000 rands a week of diesel, it's actually cheaper to own a Defender together with a used VW Polo Vivo that you'll use as a daily than to own the Defender on its own, because that's 16,000 rands worth of diesel. Now, Boy Rampai asked a very interesting and difficult question to answer, and he says, given that I've driven both the X5 and the Defender, which one would I actually pick? And look man, I'll always be a BMW fanboy at heart, and so an X5 makes more sense for my lifestyle. It's sportier, handles better, and I don't need the crazy off-road capabilities. I just need a four-wheel drive SUV with enough ground clearance to make it through when I go back to my village, that's all. But if you know in your heart of hearts that you truly want a Defender and can stomach the reliability stigma associated with Land Rover, I would go as far as to say don't even shortlist it, just go right ahead and buy one. I have zero reservations about this vehicle, and in fact, this is the best off-road SUV we've had on the channel yet. And that explains why the Defender is Jaguar Land Rover's best-selling SUV in South Africa, moving a staggering 81 units a month. But wait, where's Jaguar in those sales? At this point, the LR is carrying the whole team while the J in front of it is missing in action, just like Ronwen Williams in the World Cup opening match against Mexico. But story for another day. As always, let me know what you're getting for around 2 million rands. Thank you for watching. Until next time, take care.